Welcome to Mr. Holloway's Code and Tech Tutorials. In this video, we're going to talk about Java versus Python. But before we get started, don't forget to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And class is now in session. Now, I have to admit here, this is not a beginner's video. So if you are a beginner, I would suggest that you take my Java and Python courses. I will put the link in the comments. This is for people that are contemplating going from Java to Python or from Python to Java, or you may be taking a class and you have to learn either of those languages. Now, I will admit that Java it's easier to go from Java to Python, in my opinion, as opposed to going from Python to Java. Now, both languages have been around since the 1990s, but Python has kind of taken on a new life, and it's grown significantly over the last 10 years simply because of these AI and data science. And so let's jump right into the differences. Okay, so in general, Java is more verbose. There's a lot of things that are required in terms of like semicolons and curly brackets. And you don't have any of that in Python. Python does have its quirks, and we'll talk about that. I'll show you some examples, but it's known for being simple. It's a great beginner's language. Performance. Now, Java is faster due to it being a compiled language. I'm not going to go into what compiled means, but the thing you want to take from here is that Java is going to be faster, but it should be fine for most applications that the average person would do. Python is slower in comparison. Now, the typing system, if you're coming from Python to Java, this is going to be a little bit different for you. But if you're going from Java to Python, you already know, and not going to be a big deal. But Java is a statically typed language. Python is a dynamically typed. Rather than explain it, I'm going to show you some examples. And then finally, in the ecosystem, so with Java, it's used in enterprise applications like large systems, finance applications, or finance systems like banking systems and security systems. It's used in mobile and mobile apps. And with Python, Python is used in data analysis, data science, machine learning. It's basically the backbone of AI. Popular in science, in sports actually too, with a lot of the data science, and because we generate so much data on a daily basis, Python is the language that's used to kind of break apart that data and make sense of it. All right, now this is the exact same code. This is in Java and this is Python. Now notice that this is about 27 lines. This is 18. Now I could squeeze a little bit, make this a little bit less, but in general, this is what a Java program looks like. And you're going to notice here, you have a class, you have a method here called the main method, and then you're also going to notice semicolons and some other things here that you don't see over here. Right, so we have like our if statement, and I'm going to go over this in a second. But here you just have a simple program, and there are no semicolons that have to end at each expression. So this is where we get the simplicity of Python versus Java. So let's just jump right into a few things. So I'm going to talk about the output. So if you want to do some output, you just want to show something, some text or something like that, or calculation. Here you write in Java, you write System.out.println hello world, or you could do print hello world, System.out.print hello world. Here you do print hello world, and that's it. So let's look at an example. All right, so here I have Java, and if I run this, it should print out, and this will give us the hello world as you see here. Now, the quirky part, if you're coming from Python to Java, this is going to be a little different. So notice I don't put a semicolon there, and watch what happens when I don't put the semicolon. We get an error, and you could tell it already didn't like it, but it expected a semicolon. So in Python, you have to end every expression with a semicolon. Now, let's jump over to Python. Now in Python, you have simply print hello world. And so there it is. That's it. No semicolons or anything like that. All right. You don't have any class. You just have one line of code to write this. In Java, we have all of these lines of code just to write hello world. All right. Let's talk about comments. Comments is a pretty simple subject. A comment is simply a comment. And so let's do this. And so if you see here, I have a single line comment on line 8. It's just a single line and you write the 2 forward slashes. Here with Python, you just write a hashtag and that's it. So that's pretty much single line comments. Now with multi-line comments, it's different as well. Here you do a forward slash and an asterisk, and then you put your comment here and you end it with a asterisk and forward slash. Now this doesn't matter. This can all be on one line. It could be on separate lines, but if you want to do multiple lines, you want to have something that you want to say on multiple lines, you need to do it like this. And in Python, you simply do the 3 double quotes here, and that will give you a multi-line comment. All right. Now, moving on to variable declaration. Now, in the previous graphic, I talked about dynamically and statically typed variables. And actually, this is wrong. Let me fix this. This is wrong. Put this over here. Sorry about that. Okay, so let's look at declaring a variable. All right, so I'm going to jump into our Java example. We don't need that, and I'm just going to paste this in here. And so now we've declared a variable called number, and we've set the value to 10. All right. Now this is let's come over to Python. So let's get rid of this, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to say number equal to 10, and then I'm going to say print number. All right. So let's actually it's probably better to do it this way. So here we have a variable. It's an integer. We're going to just print the value. So I'm going to print the value. We get 10. Now watch this. I could say number is equal to Bob. Okay. And then, so what I've done is I've changed the value of number, and watch what happens. And keep in mind that Bob is a string, and we get Bob. And so we just went from an int to a string, which you can't do in Java. So let's come back over to Java. And so now I'm going to do System.out.println, and I'm going to say print number. And if I could spell number. All right, so all we're doing is we're printing a variable called number, and we'll get the value of that variable. All right, now let's try the same thing. We're going to reassign the value or reset the value to a string. So watch this. I'm going to say number is equal to Bob. All right, and right away, Java does not like that. Okay, so let's print this out and let's see what the error is. And the error says incompatible types. So simply, it says a string cannot be converted to an int. So what this is simply saying is that once you've declared a variable in Java, you have to give it a type, and you have to give it a type, and it cannot change. So we tried to change an integer to a string, which we can't do. Now I could change this to a string, which actually doesn't make sense because I have number, but just for the sake of actually, no, we'll do another one. So I'm just going to say keep that at int, and then I'll do string, and I'll just say name, and then I'll do Bob. All right, and then now instead of Bob, actually we can just get rid of that, and then now we'll just print out name. Okay, and we'll do this name, and so now we'll get 10 and Bob. And then if in this case, we'll wait and see what happens here, but we should get, everything should be okay because we're not converting anything or trying to change anything. And so that's what we get. Now watch this. I'm going to change name to Ann. Okay, so I'm just reassigning the value of Ann, and then I'm going to print this again. So I'll print this, and we should get, first we should get Bob, and then we'll get Ann. And that's what we get. All right. So the main thing to take away is that in Java, you have to declare a variable with a type. You just can't, you couldn't do anything like this where you would just say, let's say we have a variable called x and it's equal to 0, right? We can't do that because Java doesn't know the type. Okay, so that's what we mean by statically typed. And with Python, it's just a simple declaration, and you can also change the variable type as well. All right, let's move on to conditional statements. Now, I don't want to spend too much time on here, but I do want to talk about something that's important in Python. And so this, if you notice, is a conditional statement in Java. And we have a comment here, of course. But it's if, and then we have the condition here. And then this is the do something here. So if this statement is true, do this, else do that. And that's pretty much the Java conditional statement. It's not going to work without the semicolons and the curly brackets. Now notice over here, the Python statement is a lot more simple. We don't have the parentheses, and we don't have the curly brackets, and we don't have semicolons. All right, but there is something that you need to be aware of. All right, so let's look at this. All right, so I'm going to grab this statement here. I'm just going to paste it in, and this is a, let's give number. Actually, we're going to declare a number here. So int, right? Number is equal to 3. Doesn't matter here. Now, all I'm doing is I'm just going to print out whether this is going to do the do something here, or it's going to do the else statement. And so because the condition is if number is greater than 5, print this, else do that. So looks like this is going to print the else statement. So number is 5 or less. All right. Now notice that I can take this, which I highly encourage for beginners. I can take this opening curly bracket. I could put it down here. And just to make it a little bit more better on the eyes, just for organizational purposes, and I could just do this and just run it, and everything's going to work out just fine. All right, same thing. Now I could also bring this back up. There's a lot of things I could do here. Now, let's go over to Python. Now, the main thing you have to remember in Python, and let me get rid of this. Let me turn on this AI. It's off. Okay. All right, let me get rid of this, and I'm going to print this in, and let me give a number a value. So we'll say number, and remember we're in Python, so we don't have to declare its type. I'm going to say 10. Okay. Now, important thing to remember here, and let me run this. In Python, Python is a stickler about tabs. Okay, so this works, but if I were to do this, move this over here, notice we get an error. Okay, so if I run this, we're going to get an error. And what does the error says? This is indentation error. So if you don't have consistent indentations, you're going to get this error a lot in Python. Okay, so let me fix this. But also watch what happens if I just move this in. I think this should draw an error here. Let's see if I move this in. So I don't have, actually it works. Okay. But there are cases where you may have inconsistent errors. I can't duplicate it now. Let me try one other thing. See if this would do it. I think this is going to do it here. So I have an additional indentation. They're not consistent. Let's run this and see what the error we get. Okay. Again, indentation, error, unexpected indent. So in this case, this signifies, so this indentation signifies that whatever is indented is inside of this conditional statement in the true part of the conditional statement. And whatever is indented here is inside of the else statement. Okay. Now, if I were to come down here and I were to say print hello world, all right, this is not included in any part of the conditional statement because it's not indented. Okay, so if we were to run this, this is going to run either way because Python is going to execute and it's going to come out of that conditional statement and come here. So that's the big difference with conditional statements, as well as for loops and while loops and a few other things. Indentation is probably the stickler in Python, as opposed to in Java, you need to have the semicolons, you need to have your parentheses and that sort of thing. All right, let's move on. Now with arrays, we have arrays in Java, and this is the array syntax. And again, an array needs to be declared. Its type needs to be declared. And in this case, we have an array called numbers, and it is an array of ints. And this opening and closing square bracket signifies that it is an array. Now, in Python, we don't have arrays. We have something called lists. We have a tuple, and what's the other one? I can't remember off the top of my head. Oh, set. Okay. And so those are the things that we have that are similar to arrays, but they're different. Okay. Now there is a package that you can bring in an actual array, but in general, lists is kind of where we start with just the introducing our concept, or introducing the concept of a collection, collectively a collection. So arrays, lists, but these are basically very similar. Okay. All right, let's move on to for loops. And this is the last topic I'm going to cover in this video. And there are for loops available in both Java and Python, but they're quite different. And if you look at the difference here, what we're doing is we're looping through this numbers array. And here we're looping through this numbers list. Okay. So here, if you notice the difference, we have our for loop, and you notice that there are the different parts. So we're initiating the variable here, we're giving the condition, and then we're doing the iterator. So there's three parts to this for loop here, and then we're printing out each item of the array. In this case, we have a for loop. So if you can see, it's much less verbose than Java. So we just have for I in numbers, print item. And that's basically the simplicity of Java, of Python. And also notice that this has to be indented. So let's take a quick look. All right, I'm going to pop right in here into Java, and I'm going to print this. And what we're going to do is we're just going to run this. And if you notice, it's just going to print every item in the list. And if you don't quite understand this, I do have a video on this as well, for loops specifically, but notice that it has the three parts here. All right, so this is one part separated by a semicolon, another part separated by a semicolon, and then we have what's called the iterator. So those are the three parts, and then we have the do something here. So this is what it's doing here. So it's looping through this. Now let's take a look at the Python example. So let's get rid of this, and I'm going to just pop this right in here. Get rid of that. And notice how it's much simpler. If we look at this, this is 1, 2, 3 lines of meaningful code. Here we have 1, 2, 3, but then we have all of this here. So, and then we have our opening and closing curly brackets. Now it's also important that in Java, I could just move this up here. I can make this a lot less, not have as many lines. I could do that. But generally, I like to do it this way. Because it is very helpful for the eyes, for the beginners, for just understanding this. And so that's why I like to do it that way. Now, coming into Python, we have something that does the exact same thing. It prints all of the items in the list, but it's just done a little bit more simpler. So we have for I in numbers. So what we're saying is for each item in numbers, print that item. And that's pretty much it. So I just wanted to cover some of the basics of Python and Java. There is much more to both of these languages. They're both great languages to learn. And I think once you learn one, it's definitely advantageous to learn the other, because I think Java gives you the skills to understand many other languages. If you understand Java, you will understand C++, C Sharp, C. Those things will make sense to you. You probably already know probably 75 to 80% of that language. Python is great because it's a contemporary language. It's being used. It's in high demand, and they're both great languages. So that concludes the video. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And I will see you in the next video.